Hi neighbors, welcome back to Stories Next Door. I'm your host, JC Joyce. Today we have something slightly different. As they say, knowledge is power. So I have three ladies in the building today, in the pod, who are here to give us the tricks and the tips of getting into finance. But also they're going to slightly share about their personal journey. How did they get into finance? So if you are a graduate or you're looking to switch careers, stay locked in. So since you're next to me, I'm going to start with you. If you could just introduce yourself, your cultural background, and what is it that you do in finance?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Waithera. I am originally from Kenya.
I don't see your Kenya bracelet.
It's missing today. And what do? I work in capital markets, in emerging markets specifically.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marianne, also from Kenya. I work in investment banking.
Fantastic.
Hi, everyone. I'm not Kenyan. My name is Snekuku, short for Sne. You can just say that. I am South African culture.
South
Zulu,
African babes in the building today.
representing. And I'm in investment banking doing M&A.
Okay, cool. So just to set the scenery, right? So I don't work in investment banking. I don't work in finance. This is a very new territory for me, okay? And when I think of finance, I think about long hours. I think about high salaries. Okay, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But I also think about high-powered finances, so like mergers, acquisition, and stuff like that. Am I correct to think that? Or am I in the right field thinking about that?
I'd say generally, that's kind of the right territory.
Okay.
Finance is broad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different roles within finance, and that looks different for everyone. So, like the two of us are in investment banking, but Waithera is not.
Yeah.
And so, I think, generally the hours, the reputation that investment banking has for the hours is quite spot on.
Yeah.
But not in all the fields, though. Not in all the divisions.
Okay, not
I
in
think
all the divisions within investment banking.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it varies. I mean, finance itself, investment banking is a part of finance.
Yeah, finance,
it's not
yes.
like the only thing in finance. And even within investment banking, M&A, I'd say, is probably like the craziest in terms of hours, just purely because of the work we're doing. Typically, you're on a transaction for like several months before things actually close. And there's a lot of work streams that go into that. But within IB, you'll still get, guys on the debt side, guys on the equity side who are more markets focused, but more private. So for them, it's you move with the market. You're
Yeah.
not going to be necessarily working too much outside of those market hours, although they do. But I would say the hours vary. So it's not fair to say like the hours are just really bad across the board. I think you can find something that is stimulating, that you love and can learn a lot about in terms of business and like typical investment products without it being too labor intensive.
Yeah, too labor.
And maybe that's a good opportunity to just take a step back. And so how the structure of this is, right? So within investment banking, and whether I can talk about the capital market side, but within investment banking, we have product groups.
Okay.
At least across most banks. This structure varies a little bit depending on the bank that you're at. But we have product groups and we have industry groups.
Or maybe even start from like the overarching, right?
Okay.
So like we all work for the same company, right? And you would look at the company and say it's an investment bank,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
But when they say they work in investment banking, that's a particular division
Within that business.
of the investment bank.
Okay.
Okay. So I work for an investment bank,
Yeah.
but I work in our markets division. They work in the investment banking division, right?
Okay. That makes sense.
So
Yeah.
in the investment banking division, then
No, that's a good shout. So yeah, we have the investment banking division, we have the global markets division, we have a research division, we have asset management, we have wealth management. What am I forgetting? Merchant banking. which is
Yeah.
more of a private equity style business. So we have a lot of different businesses within the investment bank, and we also have like engineering. So we have a global engineering division, and so hiring.
All the operational functions,
Yeah.
so compliance,
Yeah,
etc.
exactly.
Law,
HR,
legal,
everything.
compliance.
So would you say growing up, this is the industry that you thought that you would end up in? Or was it, did you want to be a doctor, a pilot, but this just happened in the midst of everything?
For me, yes.
Yeah.
Well, let me just backtrack. One, I didn't know what investment banking was when I eventually got into it. But my thinking was, I knew I was going to do something finance or accounting related because I was just studying that. Before kind of choosing those subjects, I did think I was going to be a lawyer because I found it like so, like arguing sometimes. And I thought, I'm going to fight.
You're going to win an argument?
Yeah, like I'm going to fight for good until, I dug deeper into the profession and, I found that you also defend criminals. So it kind of didn't make sense for me.
Yes.
But then again, that was poor understanding because you can be a corporate lawyer. You don't have to be like a litigious.
Yeah, it's not all
exactly.
about going to court. Yes.
Yeah, but then I did a lot of accounting. I did a lot of like economic studies. So it just made sense that I was headed in that direction. And I got sponsorship for that. And then I just kind of stuck with it. And also back home, chartered accountancy, like those types of fields and professions are very popular and very desirable. And people hire for professionals. They don't hire for... Like here, you can go to school and do arts and then be a banker.
Yeah, be a banker.
It doesn't really work that way at home.
Okay.
So
It's
you
a
kind of
different-
have to study the thing to be able to do it. So I just knew that that's kind of where I was going. I didn't know that it was going to be investment banking specifically because didn't really know banks did that. But I knew it was going to be some finance thing. And I just kind of worked my way through it, like made a short list of careers that I thought made sense. And eventually I discovered investment banking and what they do. And I thought M&A made sense.
Yeah,
for
and
me.
you just fell in love with it from there.
Yeah, and I just connected with people and networked and then, found myself in interviews and kind of that was it.
Yeah.
So it was like a path I knew, but like not necessarily to the T. But more or less I knew exactly kind of where I was going.
Interesting. And so both of you grew up in Kenya, but you also grew up in the States. Was that a field that you knew about, or were you like...
Yeah, no, growing up in Kenya, I don't think it ever occurred to me that there was this thing called investment banking that I could one day be doing, let alone working for some of the big investment banking firms out there.
Yeah.
And honestly, it wasn't something that was comprehensible to me until I was in college. So I was fortunate enough to basically get a full ride to go to college in the US. I went to Williams in Massachusetts, and it was basically fully funded. But at Williams, you get to the school and you're surrounded by people who are entrenched in, like, their parents are investment bankers or consultants or whatever. Like, they've seen these industries and they've come in knowing that they want to do this or that. Versus I came in, trying to figure out what I want to major in, right? Am I majoring in econ or math or computer science? And I hadn't even figured that out. Versus we had people who, like, day one. And for an industry like investment banking and finance, and it's getting very, very competitive in colleges where you kind of do have to know from the
get-go, yes.
that this is what you want, because the process starts so early. And I was lucky because I made friends who were kind of interested in this, and that's how I gravitated towards it.
Yeah.
And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that this really aligned with, I'm very quant focused. I love math. I love econ, and so this is something that merged those two perfectly together. But I was fortunate to kind of be surrounded by people who were driven towards this early on, such that I got into the process early on, because if you discover your interest a bit later, it's just that much more challenging to kind of break into it.
Yes, I think it is. I was speaking to someone recently about being in the right rooms where the mindsets are there. When you're in those rooms, it opens doors for you. It even broadens your mind to think about things like this. So what motivated you to get into the field that you're in right now? Because it's slightly different to what they're doing.
Yeah, so I didn't know about banking
Yeah.
when I started, right? Like the school that I went to was huge. I think it was maybe 40,000 kids. State school, very agricultural focused. And yeah, I just kind of needed a job to pay for school, right? And so the bank that I work for now, or that we work for now, happened to be at a conference, and they had the goodie bags.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need a goodie bag. I'm going home with one of those, not knowing what they do, who they are, whatever.
Yeah.
But when I went to grab the goodie bag, the HR person had to talk to me.
Wow, that
And
is
that's how it
interesting. That
ended
was
up.
fate right there. Okay.
Yeah. So that's how, long story short, I got into it. But when I got into it, I think, the journey for me has been, I guess, a bit of a long one to get into the seat that I am in right now. When I entered, I didn't know what a bank does, right? As in, when you're inside, what does it do? So I landed in a role that actually I didn't love, right? And I ended up doing that maybe for, I think, 3.5 years, trying to find my way into a different role in the bank. And then eventually, I think the move to London helped a lot in me getting to where I actually wanted to be in the bank.
So when I think about the finance industry, as many, it's probably a very hard industry to get into, okay, especially investment banking and the field that you're also in. During that journey, okay, of getting in the bank that you're in, did you have experienced any challenges? Did you have any tough internship, for instance? Were there any rejections along the way where you could think about and say, you know what? Yeah, that was probably a hard interview that I had.
I mean, I think every interview, whether you get it or you don't, is hard.
Yeah, it is hard.
For this.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak for all careers, but for this, it definitely is. The hard part for me was I wasn't doing this before. So when I got out of school, I was doing the accounting thing. So as part of qualifying for that, you need to go do article training, which I did at an audit firm. So for 3 years, I was doing assurance.
Yeah.
Which was fine. Like, it's a job. I absolutely hated it. And so I needed to prepare for this, So all my peers who were already in it, obviously, know it and they're already doing it. And so interviews are something they're comfortable with. So I was coming out like as an outsider trying to get in, which meant in those 3 years while I was doing my job, I had a second job of like training myself to be able to get the investment banking job.
Okay, wow.
So that was hard.
Yeah.
Because I was like teaching myself something that I actually didn't know.
Yeah.
And it's not like I had somebody like, telling it to me. So a lot of it was like my own research, like signing up for stuff. And then of course the occasional like helpful people here and there. Most of them senior, so they're not going to be like in the nitty gritty of stuff, but they were helpful in terms of like navigating how things work and, finding the right people, getting the right interviews, etc.
Yeah.
So I'd say that was hard because, you're standing on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that still exists today. Like any job you're looking for,
Any industry
any
you're trying
higher
to get
level, exactly. Like you just have to take the time to like upskill yourself in it, do that preparation, and then be prepared that on the other side you might not meet the nicest or most kind or generous person. And sometimes that's what makes it hard, is that you might know stuff, but you're just hitting a brick wall on the other side, and it's tough to break through. So yeah, I'd say like that's just a way of life. Like
it
every
is.
step up is
No, I agree with what you're saying. So you started off in South Africa, okay, working for an audit firm.
Yeah.
So did you move to London to work for the bank that you work with now, or did you start in South Africa?
I mean, all of this is South Africa. So London is a last year story.
Okay.
So did 3 years Johannesburg in this audit firm. The only nice thing about it was that my very, very, very good friend, best friend, actually worked there with me. So that was the only thing that kept me for the 3 years. and the fact that I need to tick this off.
Yeah.
I was so sure that I hated it that I didn't apply. So you're on a contract basically with 3 years. And in your third year, you get to apply to be permanent. I was so sure that I hated it that much. I didn't apply. And I had no job.
Yeah.
But I was just okay to just leave because I knew I wanted to chase this thing. So I was doing that in the background. Then luckily got an interview for one of the local banks. Got that job, worked there for 6 months whilst I was interviewing at the Now Bank. And so I started there in the Johannesburg office for 4 years. And then year number 5 basically has been with the London office.
Yeah. Wow.
I think, can I add to that question? The challenge, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, the challenge was not even entering. That's hard in itself, right? But entering and realizing, okay, actually, I want to be over there. And how do I go? I'm here, but I want to be in that division, right? Because as we said, they're different divisions.
Yeah.
But when you're not in, you don't understand that. You just see, it's this bank.
That leads us to a question from one of our neighbors. And she asks, "Hi, ladies. How can someone with no direct finance experience make their profile stand out to top investment banks?"
Okay, so I would say depends on what stage of life that you're in, right? So if you're recruiting for an internship while you're in college, so when I was recruiting, I was studying econ and math, but I wasn't studying finance. So a bit of a difference because I came into and Williams is a great school, right? But I came in from people who did finance at Wharton, right, which is exclusively a finance school, which is very different. But I would say if you're recruiting early on, and I know this has gotten extremely competitive, but it's not exactly a requirement for an internship that you have had a previous finance internship. I think one big thing that there's no way to get around is the networking point.
Okay.
Right? I think you have to speak to people in these different seats and in these different roles and hopefully make an impression on someone, which frankly is how I ended up in where I am. The firm came to school. They were holding an event. They had the session, and then after the session, I walked up to someone and I spoke to him for a few minutes, and we had a conversation, and he was impressed, and he just, he was happy with that, and he took my email, and we got into contact after that, and that's how I got the interview.
Wow, I'm hearing good stuff. It's they always say it's who you know.
Yeah, they always say.
Yeah, they always say it's who you know in this world. So wow, okay.
Yeah,
so into practice.
And I know for a lot of us, coming from Kenya, it's not like you know people at these places, right?
True.
You don't, and I don't think that necessarily has to be a big discouraging factor. But trying to reach out to people that have a common connection. If someone emails me who's Kenyan, I'm 100% responding.
Yeah.
If someone emails me who's Williams, my school, I'm 100% responding. If there's a common factor, then you can try and make these connections with different people who can then hopefully, like she said, find someone who's helpful and who helps make the right introductions for you. Because to be frank, these banks get so many applications. How is your resume going to stand out from 1,000 others? It's just that there's no science to that, right? Versus if you have a conversation with someone who thinks you'd be a good fit, who thinks you make a good impression on them, and they want to give you a chance, and kind of you get the opportunity to speak to more people, and you make an impression, and they want to interview you, hire you.
Yeah,
that's kind of it's something that there's no way to get around, I don't think.
So how
it's very hard to get around. Maybe let me put it like that.
So how is the interview process?
Different perspectives. I think in London it's very different to what I experienced, and in other regions, it can be a little bit less rigorous than it is here. I think here it's very it happens at very set specific times, and hence the thousands of applications that come in at once.
Yeah.
Whereas in other places it doesn't necessarily happen that way. Will kind of get the jobs usually.
Yeah.
there's maybe one or two that kind of get it on just like pure, I applied, I
Yeah,
interviewed,
applied,
and I
you
got it.
interviewed.
Yeah.
I think also before the resumes get to our desk, there's a process of sifting even before that,
Yeah.
right? And I think for someone to get through that, they really have to think about, someone's not going through the however many applications that there are, but if there are keywords that I don't know what system HR uses, but I know they use something.
Yeah, there is something that they use.
Right. So I'll see, like our interns who come in or something like that. It's like, oh yeah, they put there that they do trading for themselves, or maybe they've put like they'll have the name of the company and like they've come in for a shadow or like something like that, right? Yeah. So it's those keywords will then move their resume into, oh, okay, let's get this out to the emerging markets trading desk.
Yes.
Because it kind of seems like, it
aligns with what
they align. So
I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but again, we don't know the system.
Yeah.
But I think the logic behind that system is HR does not know what we're actually doing on the day to day, to be fair. And so to her point, yes, they have to kind of, filter people down in a way that like you're putting people to her team that, represent what the division might be doing. So the key names really matter. For us, in M&A, I'd probably say the M&A internships you might have done at other reputable banks is super important. So it's great that maybe you worked, I don't know, like pick whatever great company, but maybe you were like doing, something in ops or something like that, and you probably did that for 6 years. Really great, and I'm sure you built good experience over that. But the person who did 2 weeks at a fellow bank will probably be put through.
Yeah, probably. Yes.
Yeah, so it's really great if you can highlight, things that make you more relatable to the field you're applying for, and like use good names, which means you have to kind of get those internships. Yeah. So there's a lot of grunt work before you actually do the application.
Yeah, and that you have to put yourself out there.
Yeah, I think I'd also add something basic, that your resume should be a finance style resume, right? Like,
yes.
As a sifting through resumes, if it's like some fun colored type resume, it's just not going to make the cut. And like that's as easy as download a finance resume online and fill it out.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Stick to that kind of one page template format. Like stick to that, fill it out in a way that markets you as best as you can. And something that I was told several years ago, that I've been in this role for 5 years, and so the last time I was recruiting was a long time ago. But I remember distinctly someone telling me that when you're in front of the interviewer, when they look at you, when you're speaking to them and looking at your resume, they need to understand how what the role that you're applying for is the natural next step in the journey that you've been on. So like, that needs to be the thing that they're taking away from looking at your resume and from that conversation. And so maybe you didn't, because not everyone has that finance internship or whatever. And if this is early on, like trying to go for those opportunities, 100% do it. Yeah. But trying to, if you're in college, like you were in this business club, or you trade stocks for yourself, or however you can try and exhibit that you have some basically exposure to finance, that this isn't just, it's not something you're doing on a whim, that you're just like, let me just try this out kind of thing, is super, super helpful.
Yeah. They call it how to tell your story. There's a whole guide on this, by the way.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in M&A, investment banking in general, there is several guides online. The one I used personally was called Investment Banking Blueprint, I think.
Okay. So it gives you the things needed pretty much.
Yeah.
What kind of questions you get. How to prep.
Everything. Like,
talking about questions, is there any memorable question that you guys have that was within the interview process that you're like?
So, I interned for... I think I can say this now because this bank kind of doesn't exist anymore. But I interned for Credit Suisse.
Credit Suisse.
My first summer, my second year in college summer. And I had a great experience, by the way. I had an amazing experience at Credit Suisse. The reason I say it doesn't exist anymore is like last year they were acquired by UBS.
Yeah.
But
So be careful. The person, the people still exist. The name of the bank is
it's a different bank. It exists. Anyway, and then I was switching to my current role the next summer. And something that I thought was like, I didn't have to pay attention to was the question of, why do you want to work for this bank? And I was like, oh, I can just give you some blueprint answer and we'll move on, right? Because are you really assessing me on that question?
Yeah.
Didn't think so, but like my interviewer really pushed me on that question, like, why do you want to work for this firm? And I was like, damn.
I just want the money.
And you can't say
I want a job.
So you hire
the real answer, right? Like,
right?
I
Like,
want a
that's what
job, I
thought,
want
like-
money, but you can't say that.
Yeah,
You can't say that. But that's the reality. Like, bro.
No, you can't say that, okay? Guys, don't say that, okay? Neighbors, let's not do that.
And ever since, I really advise people who are trying to do this, like, it actually makes a difference if you do research on the company. And going back to, you have to speak to people at the company because these companies are fairly similar. We're similar in what we do, right? But there are distinct cultural differences between the different firms. And you kind of have to know enough about the firm, and you can't find out this out from a web search, right? Like, you have to speak to people to kind of know this is what distinguishes this from that, and these are the things that people within this firm pride themselves on, and that's what I need to speak to at that interview. But that question really stuck with me because I didn't think it was something that people would take that seriously in an interview, and she really pushed me on it, and we spent like 10 minutes on that question.
Interesting. Cool. So we have a few minutes left, but there's something that I want to cover. So the work life, okay? How is the day to day? Okay, like I see day to day in the life of investment banker, it's always glamorized on like the TikToks and the Instagram. But how does it look like? What time do you guys wake up? What time do you guys go to bed?
Wow. That's very interesting. I think the social media platforms and TV shows, etc., looks great. And sometimes those moments exist.
Yeah.
Like it can be fun and it can be like, high life and like jetting off and like going to.
Oh, now I see your Instagrams. I see the Instagram stories.
No, it can be, but like the day to day is like actual work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one, there are no actual hours. So there's a time to come in, but there isn't really a time to go home. Mm-hmm. So there's no like, 8 to 5. That's not a real thing. So, 8, sure, show up early, preferably. Mm-hmm. I think for my team specifically, we do like anywhere between 9 and like 9:45 is kind of acceptable. Mm-hmm. Anything beyond that is just like, it's kind of frowned upon, but it's understandable if you were working like super, super, super late.
Yeah.
So
late is
typically,
super late?
I mean, like watching the sunrise is super late.
Super late, yeah.
So let's say you were closing out like a major transaction and, there's several things that need to be wrapped up. And let's say you go to bed at like 7 a.m. or something. Mm-hmm. Then sure, no one expects you to be at the desk by 9. Yeah. And even if they did, you can easily justify that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if you come in at 11, okay, fine. Like, it's not a big deal. Don't do it every day. Like, where you're coming in at midday, that doesn't make sense. So there is a time to come in, so around about 9ish. Yeah. But leaving is not set because leaving is based on finishing stuff.
And how do you guys deal with the work pressure then?
As in of doing long hours?
Yeah, of doing long hours.
So their division is a bit different, or at least her team is. I work in our emerging markets trading desk, and so we follow the emerging markets stock market hours. Okay. Right? So this is the time the stock market opens. This is the time it closes. Mm-hmm. And like maybe you have an hour, maybe you have like 2-3 hours afterwards that you do like your own cleanup and stuff like that. So for us, I think like our hours are reasonable. Like generally we'll get in at around 7 and then we'll leave at like by 6 p.m. we should be done. But how do we deal with it? I think...
Yeah, do you have like a self-care routine? Do you have like, I don't know, I always see you're on your private jet. So like, how do you guys deal with
sorry,
that?
can I borrow that? It's always everywhere.
So how do you guys deal with that? Friends you talk to?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, right here. Yeah. I walk over to her desk regularly to mostly complain and like
Yeah.
de-stress a little bit. We have dinners
Yeah.
together. We'll do lunches, etc., walks.
No, that's good.
So that helps blow off some steam because
Yeah.
you know it's not practical to say you're just gonna rise above everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes you get mad and you
Yeah,
need
no.
someone who's gonna understand.
You
You
have
need
to.
community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mm.
yeah.
It's so
In and
important.
outside of the work environment.
Okay.
Yeah, and the things that are important to you. And this is obviously really hard at the first and second and frankly third year of doing investment banking. But as I've been doing this for 5 years, and something that's super important the longer you're in it is identify the things that are important to you and try and carve out time for them, prioritize them, which sometimes means, you know, switching things up, or maybe you do something later, you work gets delayed a little bit. Like just trying to prioritize the things that are important to you, because you can't do this job sustainably for a long time
No.
by sacrificing everything that is important to you. It's just, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
This can't be your life.
Yeah.
Okay.
It cannot be your life.
Yeah.
And I think some people, you'll see them come into banking and they're like, I've always wanted to be here. Like, I've sacrificed so much. I'm so glad to be here. And you're like, no, like you actually have to have other things
Yeah, that
that
you
are
love doing.
outside, right? And I actually think it's helpful to be a Black person and like a person who has community, because I almost feel like we're more well-rounded in that way, right? Like outside we're having fun, or like we're chatting and we're enjoying life. There's other things outside. There's some people, they come in and it's like literally banking is their life and they lose it. Eventually they lose it.
Yeah, at some point.
Right?
Yeah.
So you need the perspective.
So all of you guys spoke about the importance of networking. You know, you could meet people who would probably refer you to these investment bankings. Do you yourselves have mentors? Because now you're already in the industry, so mentors that would help you grow. And you talked about getting to a certain point.
Absolutely. So I started in the New York team. So I spent my first 3 years in the firm in the New York team and the last 2 years in this team. But during the 3 years I was in New York, I formed a lot of mentorship relationships. Some with people who are still at the firm and some with people who have left the firm. And my biggest mentor, honestly, I would call him cheerleader, because he was a big advocate for me when I was in New York and when he was at the firm. Is now no longer at the firm, but he's still in finance and he's still a mentor and he's still a friend. And you kind of have to find those people, and those people might not necessarily look like you, because frankly, there's not that many people in the firm who look like us. But you can still find those relationships and those connections even in people who don't look like you. Like even now in the London office, my main mentor and the person that I feel most free with and able to speak to and candidly talk to, and I know he has my back, doesn't look like me, right? He's a white man, which is also true in New York as well. But frankly, I've been able to find some of those relationships being super core to my progression.
Yeah. What about you?
So right now I don't have a mentor, but to get from the team that I was on before, so back office into front office, or like the revenue generating part of global markets, I took a sponsor, right? Like not even a mentor, a sponsor. At that time, he was trying to make partner. I didn't realize it. I just knew he's a managing director, great guy, whatever. And I guess he saw a tenacious Black woman who was like, yo, listen, I can do this. And for him, he's like, okay, by me helping you, right? It's a two-way thing. He's since left the firm. And I feel like once these people leave the firm, you're just like, it's like a little funeral at your desk. And you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do without you? So he's since left. And so, yeah, like I personally don't have a mentor right now or a sponsor, but I think I can think throughout the past 7 years how much it's helped to have that.
You have to have someone who's going to cheerlead for you, be there for you. What about you?
Yeah, I have several mentors for different reasons, which I find that works really well for me. I have the person that I can bitch to, for lack of a better word. and be completely honest and not really like be worried about what's going to be said back. Then I have, the career focused person who's just there for like, what do you need? Like, how do we get from A to B sort of thing. And then you have the person who's like not really doing anything for you outside of like advocating for you when you need.
That's
So
a
that
big
person,
deal.
that person
you need
is, they're not involved in your day to day and they don't know when you're crying and sad and all of those things. But when you need,
They're there
it's
for you.
hard to get that person though.
Oh yeah.
And it's hard to keep them. Yeah, like to be honest, right now I have the person, but I don't know where the relationship stands. But I don't feel like it's in a bad place either. But long story short, I have several people that do different things, and that's just inside the bank. And then there will be other people outside of the bank, because I think it's super important to have the perspective of someone who's not doing what you're doing.
Yeah, that's
because they
true.
can be totally impartial, and they can help you see like daily life for what it is, and not just I'm an investment banker and I need to do this and this and that. You need someone who's going to ask you the questions of, okay, fast forward 10, 15 years from now, like what's your plan? Like, are you trying to do this, or are you trying to build other things in your personal life that maybe work or may not work with this current career?
Yeah.
So, and I change them. So, depending on where I'm at in my life, I try to get like the people that are going to help me think holistically. Because honestly, like when you're in the day-to-day of the job, you can totally not see anything but just that job that you're doing, which I really struggle with. So it helps to have these different people that help kind of round out the thinking a little bit.
Yeah. So just a few minutes, we're going to wrap up. Final question. Okay. What is one book or resource that you could recommend someone out there? So it could be a self-development book, could be how to work in finance book, that someone could pick up that book and probably that would project them into the next stage of their lives if they want to get or develop themselves. Do you have anything in mind?
Specifically for finance?
No, self-development books.
If it's about the investment banking thing, that Banker Blueprint, highly recommend. If you really are serious about it, it'll tell you everything you need to know. So that's just career-wise. Development books, I enjoy mind-related things.
Okay.
Like I hate fiction, so I tend to stick with non-fiction stuff. I love like psychology kind of topics that help you understand the mind, how people think, how things work, like what leads people to do the things that they do. I find those very enlightening and allow you to kind of see the world differently. And again, the reason I do that is because, I spend so much time doing one thing that I kind of lose sight of the rest of the planet.
Yeah.
So those books help me, stay human, if I can put it that way. And podcasts as well. Several of them, but I guess the main ones I focus on, if people want to search it, is any podcast from Pushkin Industries, so either revisionist history or cautionary tales, that sort of thing. These are all kind of psychology and philosophy major guys, and so they deal a lot with like mind stuff and growth and healing, etc. Another one on wellness is one from it's called A Slight Change of Plans, which is very interesting when you need to kind of introspect a little bit. So a lot of books I read are usually suggestions from those podcasts.
What about you?
I don't know if I have an answer to that.
Bloomberg. Wall Street Oasis. I'll answer it with an analogy.
So this mentor that I was telling you that I had in New York, who's since left the firm, was trying to get me to think big picture and holistically, like she said, and because I was trying to make a decision about my present, and he was trying to make me think about it, frame it more broadly, so that I'm not just making this choice, but I am making a bigger choice about life. So he told me the story of this investment banker who met a fisherman, and told the fisherman, oh, the fisherman was great at fishing, and so he was like, you're great at fishing, like you're very good at this, so we should start a business. You can,
I know this
you know the story.
Yeah.
So the investment banker was telling the fisherman, we should start a business. You can do the fishing. I'll do the business. Then we can take the business public. You'll have a lot of investors. You'll get a lot of money. You'll be very rich. And then after that, you can do whatever you want. And the fisherman then asks, like, okay, well, then what? And then the investment banker is like, you'll have all this money, you can do anything you want. And the fisherman is like, but I just want to fish, which is what I'm doing now. And so it's helpful to remember that, like, kind of remember your why.
Yeah, true.
In your day-to-day, because especially in jobs that are super demanding, I think it's a question of priorities at some point, and a question of what matters at this point, and that changes at different points in your life. That's going to change. Yeah. But he was basically trying to get me to go back to the root and remember my why, and have that factor into my decision making.
Yeah. What about you?
So on the finance side, I would say Financial Times and Bloomberg, just to keep updated on just the news, because that affects the markets. And so if someone asks you, at least you know what's going on. And then on the other side, I hate to sound cliche, guys, but the Bible. I would say the Bible.
Yes.
That's not cliche.
Yes, the Bible.
I'm probably like the worst Christian you'll ever meet, honestly. Like, I'm not the ideal Christian at all, but I do think the Bible helps me remember who I am, right? And it just brings things into perspective, because I think, the trading floor can absolutely demolish you, right? It can demolish your sense of self-worth, just your identity, things of that sort. But I'm always reminded when I read the Bible that, girl,
don't worry about it.
Girl, you're created to be, a warrior. You're created to be someone that is, a child of God, right? And if you don't have that, honestly, the bank will destroy you. So that's really helped me just generally.
No, I think you do.
Girl.
You do well. So we've come to the end of the pod. Thank you so much, ladies. I enjoyed the conversation. I work in tech. This is new information for me. So thank you so much. Neighbors, I hope this session was invaluable to you guys as it was to me. And if you're looking to pursue your career in finance, in investment banking, or in trading, just remember that every step you take, no matter how small it is, it brings you closer to your goals every single day. As I said, ladies, thank you so much for being here. You talked about the Bible, and I love the Bible. I read the Bible, okay? So the Bible tells us in Acts about giving. Okay, and I feel that we've had a very informative session. Okay, so you guys were sharing knowledge. So thank you so much. In Acts chapter 20, verse 35, it says, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Okay, true. So whatever you share today, the Almighty is going to add on to that, ladies. So thank you so much. Neighbors, remember to share, like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. Until next time, I'm your host, JC Joyce. Bye. Cut.
That was so fun. Oh.